Unleash your creativity with your micro welder, episode 17. In this episode, I'm going to show you how to weld these long spike stud earrings from wire. Okay, we are going to start with 16 gauge sterling silver wire, and don't worry about the ends being rather crooked. We are going to straighten them out afterwards. And I think I am going to go with 1.5 inches long, but I'll cut a little bit longer just in case. So let's do around here. By the way, you want to use sprue cutters or heavy gauge wire cutters. These are sprue cutters for jewelry making, so the end of castings, and I can cut really thick wires. This would be, you could damage your fine cutters. So whenever possible, use these. And don't worry about using high grade, whether or not it's going to work out. Because we're going to file things down anyway. Okay. You don't need very expensive equipment. So what we're going to do is I'm going to eyeball it. If you are precision oriented, use a ruler, mark it with a marker before cutting. So now we're going to try to straighten these out and do final measurement before hammering. Now we're going to straighten these out. What you try to do is do most of the work by using pair of pliers that are chain nose to bend, straighten out as much as you can. It's a lot easier that way. And with this, I can even just use my fingers so that it is somewhat straight. Then what you do is, as you are hammering, tapping lightly, you roll. You see how it's not rolling very well? What you do is, I can do it one at a time. And already, it is a lot better. You don't have to crank it. And how you know it's straight is when you can roll. Like that. And you do the same on for the other one. And if need be, use your fingers to help. It's faster that way. There, these two are rather straight now, and I can roll them easily. Now we are ready to trim. You see here, one is a bit more flush, one is tapered. That is because I use these cutters, which are flush. They're not perfectly flush, but they're flush on one side and beveled on the other. So what I want to do is I want to make it somewhat flush. And it's okay that if you don't have flush cutters, they're somewhat beveled. It's okay, because when you hammer it, it's not going to be just flat. It'll be domed up top, and that's okay. You can file it if you wish, depending on the effect you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it, and you see it's flat topped, and then I'm going to make sure they are flush here like this by just quickly tapping that again in case it shifted while I was talking. And now I have a perfect pair. Now I'm going to see about length. It's longer than I really want. So I'm going to cut off a little bit more. And again, you can use a ruler. I'm free-forming this. You can use a ruler to mark it so it's just under under 2 inches. And I like the length of these for stud earrings. They'll be dramatic. Now we are ready to hammer. I'm going to hammer one side flat, and I want it to go tapered to a point like that. So, I mean, you can do it any way you want. You could have it just flattened a little area, but I think I'm going to go gradually. And I'm going to do one first and keep it while I do the other next. Okay, so I'm going to figure out, I want it here. You don't need to crank it down right at the beginning. Much easier if you do it gradually. The other thing is, I'm going to pause here to let you know that when you hammer on one side, it will bend like this. That's the case with all metals. So every so often you want to turn it around and hit the other side, and so that it's even. The other thing is, if you are like me and you have trouble having it balanced when you hammer and you're going in one direction quite a bit, what's going to happen is one side is going to get bigger than the other. So you do the same thing on the other. Now, if it does not work out because it's a bit too late and it's wonky, don't worry. What you can do is flatten it by doing this, just gently on the side. So all I did was, it was flaring on one side more. I go to the side and I'm gently hammering it in so that to keep it straight. So let's continue. So this is the effect. It's slightly curved and I just tap it until it's straightened again. And that is why it is really important not to hit really hard. And also, I don't want it textured in the sense of having these hammer marks. Now you might want to have them, in which case you can hammer and create using different hammers also, or even screwdrivers, anything that to mark it. But I want it to be smooth, so I'm going to continue this. So, and I quite like that. I might flare it out a little bit more so as to get a difference. So there's more contrast, but this is already really nice. And then we're going to put the post. And I think what I want is, even though this is round and it looks nice, I think I might want it slightly squared. So I'll tap it a little bit. It's barely noticeable, but you see, when I turn it, you can see it. It's a little bit more squared. I like it that way. So, and then I might file this down a little later, but before I do that, I'm going to work on this side. It's also important to compare once in a while. Even though they look great, see this side is a little bit smaller, so I know to continue. Check once in a while. I think this side is still skinnier, and don't worry about the top. The reason why it's like that is when I was cutting, there were ends, and then when you hit it, exaggerates it. What we're going to do before we weld is to file it. So what I'm going to do is that side just a wee bit more, and then we're done. And I think I like that, the effect of that. And I don't know which side is crooked, but they seem bowed a little bit. We're just going to correct it slightly. Now we are ready to file. So I'm using a simple set of files, and what we're going to do is file the ends. So it's what you want to do is to file flat first, like this, and then this way, so that it's not sharp, it's slightly rounded. And when you're doing it in an angle like this, rotate this so that it's not one-sided. Just keep doing this while you're doing this action over and over again, and you'll get a much more even dome. And same thing on this side. Much easier if you flatten and then dome, but also every so often, and I was doing this off camera, I didn't realize I didn't have the camera on. Check both sides that they're even and that you're happy with the way it is domed. So this side could stand a bit more doming. And always check the length to make sure that they're even. And I think we're good at this point. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. And what you should do is check to see if there is one side that is not as nice. And we're going to put the post on that side. And I think this side, for some reason, is not as nice as this side. So I'm just going to do that. And we are ready to go. We want stud posts that have a base, because we're not using solder, we're just going to weld. But before I demonstrate that, we want to figure out where we want this. I think I'm going to put it slightly lower, because having this a little bit raised on the ear be just so funky. So I'm going to figure that out, and then use a marker to mark where I want both of these earrings to be welded. And we want to mark it so that we're not just eyeballing it, and the left and the right will be the same. I think maybe here, somewhere there. Okay. So what's going to happen is I'm going to do this and weld like that. I want to show you how best to weld. You see, there is the base here, and we basically want that little base like this to melt onto this. And so what we want to do, I'm going to show you this. Let's see if I can just to do that. Basically what we want is at an angle, not touching here and not touching the shaft of this, just at an angle, like this and melt. Try to melt the base, hitting the base at an angle 45 degrees, not like this, so as to melt it back onto the shaft or hitting the shaft with your electrode, but 45 degrees and hitting it so that it goes and melts onto this. I'm ready to weld, and I'm welding on top of a soldering stone. So that's what I use when I'm soldering, so that it protects, it diffuses heat. And you don't want to weld on top of this or on wood that could damage. If you don't have one of these, they're inexpensive, you could use a porcelain tile and just use the back of it. So, and that just protects the surface. It's not that important. Something that is fire retardant. Okay, so I've got this, and I have my welder set at 20 watts. I'm going to try to do it so that you can see it. But basically, it'll be like this. It's going to be a bit tricky to film, but we will see. So I've got my marker, and I'm going to put this down in the middle. Okay. That did not work very well. I'm going to show you first weld, what the result is. You see, that has melted the base onto this. And I'm going to clean a bit so that you can see. I haven't done this in a while, so maybe I could also reduce the heat. I'm going to see about that. And you'll see that sometimes if you have less precision than you need, you might damage the side a bit, but that's okay. You can file it off a little later. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to repeat the process all the way around so that the base is welded right onto our wire. It has melted. The base on this side is perfect, and this has melted. So we're going to do all the way around. This is quite solid, but it's bent. That's okay. Just adjust it because it's sterling silver. Make sure that it is strong and that you don't have to redo. You've blown off the base. It takes a soft hand to be able to, some practice to do this. It stayed, even though I bent the post. So even at 15-watt power, it works, just to let you know. Now, what I'm going to do is show you. I'm going to file it. You see, this is flat. The side is curved. I want this to be somewhat flat. If there's a bulb, just to clean it up a little bit. It doesn't bother me that much. And I'm going to stop here to say that if it is the case you actually have flame and torch. It is much easier when you tack weld. So do the first one. The rest using solder, it really does help because it goes under this into the seam, and if your hammering was not completely flat, the solder acts as a glue, so it helps a lot. Now all I'm going to do is doing the finishing touches to this, and we're done. By the way, as far as finishing is concerned, if you have a Dremel, these wheels are great. This will give you a satin finish, and this one will give you a brush finish. But if you don't have those and you're not sure if you are going to get some, you could start off, if it's a one-off project that you might be doing, using these nail files. So it's got all sorts of grits, and what you can do is, I think I'm going to use this one. A nice brush finish. Versus this, or I could go with something more of a satin. Let me feel these. This might be a bit more satiny versus your hammer. And this is the finished product. I hope you found that episode to be interesting. And if you did, please like and subscribe and comment below. I'd love to hear from you. And actually, it helps the algorithm. I'm a wholesaler of premium quality chains and findings, as well as micro welders. I'm going to leave a note below, a little bit more information about our company and what you've seen in this video.